EFF leader Julius Malema will today address what appears to be a breakdown of the party's relations at municipal relations or at municipal level. It follows a war of words between the Gauteng ANC and the EFF, where the two parties co-govern. Malema is due to hold a press briefing at midday today, which will likely also touch on claims by the US ambassador to South Africa, and in particular the alleged arming of Russia for its conflict in Ukraine. Well, let's get some perspective now, and we speak to our politics reporter, Govan Whittles, who is at the EFF headquarters. Govan, good morning to you. Let's start with the political issues that may be top of mind for the EFF leader.
Good morning, Oli. Well, they certainly do involve Gauteng and governance in the hung municipalities, particularly in Ekurhuleni. A statement coming out yesterday by the EFF condemning a decision by the Gauteng government to offer jobs using the EPWP scheme to people to clean up Gauteng. Essentially, they're hoping to employ thousands of people across the province to essentially clean up the areas that are most affected by illegal dumping, where the waste is running over in certain municipalities. Sounds a lot like the Andres Tatane cleanup campaign. That's exactly what the EFF says the Gauteng government is hoping to do. What it's angry about is that the Gauteng government wants municipalities to absorb these workers, over 1,000 of them in Ekurhuleni. That statement coming out of the Gauteng EFF saying that it can't do so because the waste department in Ekurhuleni has a set budget. It's interesting because the EFF is in government in Ekurhuleni. It's those kinds of issues that will likely dominate in measure some part of the EFF's reflections on its governments of local unity with the ANC. They're governing together, but there is some tension. Remember the chief whip in Ekurhuleni last week holding a media briefing accusing the EFF of being a supergroup in the municipality. The EFF today expressing concerns about claims that the Johannesburg mayor's qualifications may not be legitimate. This after the EFF had accepted and supported the candidature of Kabelo Gwamanda, the Johannesburg mayor, and even defended him after the Democratic Alliance had raised concerns that he may have been involved in some alleged scamming of people through a private venture. So there's a lot to deal with at a municipal level, but then there's also a lot to deal with at a provincial level. We're expecting the Gauteng ANC and EFF provincially to set up a political resolution forum. That's for the municipalities where they govern together. And then, of course, there are major national issues which the EFF's national leadership have already commented on, among them this allegation that the South African government may have armed the Russian government in that Ukraine conflict, which has been denied as being an official order by the South African government, an official investigation being underway, and the US said to have apologized, but not doing so openly in public just yet. And Julius Malema having already weighed in on that matter, saying he doubts the ANC has the capacity to arm the Russian government. There are a number of other issues. Only the EFF is turning 10 this year. And of course, some preparation is needed ahead of what is a string of events which will reflect on the EFF's road to 10 years old, but also where it sees itself now as it prepares to govern.
Yeah, and let's touch on that last element, Govan. The EFF, a weighty political entity in South Africa. It's the third biggest political party in South Africa, as you mentioned. Turning 10 years old this year after its formation back in 2013. Let's discuss for a moment what the state of this party looks like 10 years since its formation.
Only we're expecting some commentary on that from the EFF's national leadership. Interesting to note that the EFF's formation in 2013 was almost immediately followed up by their entry into parliament the following year after those national elections. And they've styled themselves after the July 26 movement of the Cuban Revolution. And they've also styled themselves as a protest organization. And 10 years later, if we could skip ahead, they're entering a phase of reimagining the EFF in South Africa's politics, not only as an opposition party or a protest movement, but as a governing party. They've launched, if you will, what are pilot projects in municipalities, but ahead of the 2024 elections, there's a real possibility of the EFF entering into provincial governments, perhaps even national government. The question of whether or not the EFF would even consider or go into a national coalition with the ANC has been carefully managed, even dodged at times by the EFF's national leadership. But it is a consideration which is arising in South Africa's politics, certainly one that the DA believes is an eventuality. The DA and EFF's relationship has all been broken down. There doesn't appear to be any pathway to future cooperation between those two parties. And so the EFF is really seeing itself as a government in waiting in real measure. It's already governing in the municipalities. It may govern provincially and nationally, and that will likely inform a lot of their considerations towards 2024. It's an issue they can't avoid as they celebrate 10 years since their formation, famously launched at the Marikana Kopi with a strong constituency among the mine workers in the northwest. That constituency having been built now across the country, particularly among the youth, consolidated through its student command, and certainly after the co-opting of some of the FISMAS4 leaders into the party, obviously some of them having joined the party voluntarily and having grown the party support base among the students. Does look like the EFF will remain an important factor in South African politics and perhaps even in South African governance on a national level. That would mean their policies become all the more important. And today we hope to get some clarity as to how they would approach that going towards the 2024 elections.
What time can we expect that briefing, Govan?
It'll happen at midday. It's a press briefing by the EFF's president, Julius Malema. It's likely to go over an hour, Oli. There's always a lot to discuss. Of course, there are material issues which we've highlighted, but we do expect him to weigh in on some of the more contemporary issues which dominate the South African discourse at this time.
Indeed. That's my colleague, Govan Whittles, live for us at the EFF's headquarters.